Hey folks, your
Absolute Packer podcast initiating in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
2, 1.
Alrighty, hello out there, Packer Nation and fans of the Absolute Packer podcast, and welcome to another edition of the Absolute Packer podcast. This is the off-season edition, what I'm titling an Offseason of Upheaval. So without further ado, my partner in crime, Elliot, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm amazing.
Just ask him. He's amazing. Funny. Okay, so yeah, I'm titling this one an off-season of upheaval because, my goodness, there have been a ton of changes going on with the Packers in the front office, coaching staff, everybody down to the janitor, it seems. And, you know, for an organization that has shown incredible stability over the past, we'll say it's basically been 12 years since Ted Thompson's took over along with Mark Murphy, the amount of changes that have taken place since the last regular season game have been stunning, to say the least. I think that many of them are warranted, but if I was to say that I saw all of these coming as swiftly as they did, I'd be lying. Thoughts?
It's been a little crazy.
Yep.
It's been a couple of weeks since we recorded last, and it never felt like the right time because it seemed like there was just kind of more stuff coming for a while.
Yeah, like daily, there'd be new little things leaking out about who's staying, who's going, and what else is happening. And yeah.
And your rundown is pretty amazingly organized.
Yeah, it almost had, as I was typing it up, there was so much stuff going on. I wanted to really put it into some nice buckets because as I was typing it through, I'm going, man, a lot of stuff happened. So it wasn't just like a stream of consciousness. I wanted to make sure I was pretty methodical about how I put stuff out there. So I think we can hop into it, and I divided it up into basically three different things. Number one would be front office changes. Number two is coaching changes. And then number three is more of an open topic, kind of a concept, and I'm calling it looming items for Brian Gutekunst, the new GM. So I will hop into the first section of changes, and that's the front office changes. And the big bombshell, which, again, in today's news cycle, it may as well have been 3 years ago, but it wasn't that long ago. Ted Thompson stepped aside as GM, which he had been since 2005, and he's going to be reassigned as I guess I'm using air quotes, but I'm not sure of his official title. He's kind of the head scout. And, I guess that's okay.
You think that's what he always wanted, really?
Yes.
But it's like, yeah. And, but like, we're all trained to, if a promotion comes your way, to take it.
Yeah.
Right?
If you turn down promotions, it can be a career death sentence and you end up lateral. So there may be an element in that. And who knows, maybe at the point in his life when he became the Packers GM in 2005, maybe he did want that. And as time went on, he
probably did. Yeah. And I feel like he may have been effective early on, and then it just kind of trailed off. He had
kind of, I look at it two buckets. His first 5 or 6 drafts were very good. Were they, the best thing ever? No, but they were pretty darn good. He landed some outstanding players. Second half of his tenure as drafting is not very good, and it shows with the product on the field and kind of, for lack of a better term, the mess that the roster is right now. So it's almost two clear camps, and it happened, the bad drafting basically started immediately after they won the Super Bowl, which, is unfortunate, but hey, got a Super Bowl out of it.
Well, and that's the thing. That's why I feel like, I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I always felt like I was an apologist for Ted Thompson.
For a long time too. Yes, I was.
Who might have second guessed this guy? He got us to the Super Bowl, and it was amazing.
Yeah, and I think this is my own opinion, and I think others may share it somewhat, but I'm really staunch in this. And Aaron Rodgers, when he got hurt, it goes back to this: the amount of warts and complacency, laziness, just overall just lethargic things that were brought about when he got hurt. He masked so many ills. He masked so many ills, not even with the team, but all the way up to permeated, like almost all the way up to Mark Murphy. It's incredible how one player, basically was responsible for, in my opinion, he's responsible for Ted Thompson having a job, Mike McCarthy, and Mark Murphy on some level, kept those guys employed, because without Rodgers, things aren't pretty. And when Rodgers got hurt this past year, when Anthony Barr took him down, people go, well, nobody saw this coming. And I go, I beg to differ. He broke his first collarbone in 2013, and that team wasn't very pretty. There were signs of it then. They managed to right the ship and make the playoffs, and then everybody kind of swept it under the rug and said, no big deal. But the signs and the cracks were there. And then they came full circle last year. But new era.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Yeah, that's enough said.
Yeah. I mean, you could go really far down the rabbit hole, but I mean, it's patently obvious that Aaron Rodgers made this organization and made a lot of people a lot of money, to include himself. And we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers, what he's about to get in his contract later on. But
that will be the fun discussion.
Yeah, no doubt. It's its own podcast, for cripe's sake, Oh,
and I'm sure we're not done talking about it.
Yeah. So number 2, following Ted Thompson, Brian Gutekunst was elevated to the GM, promoted to GM. People, I'd say the lay fan probably has no idea who he is. People who pay attention a little bit, myself included. I've heard of him. I didn't know a ton about him. I knew that he was a younger guy, and I knew he was a scout. He had 19 years with the Packers. So he was chosen to be the new GM. And, the press conference that he had, about a month ago or so, it was, it seemed pretty, he seems like a good guy. He has an unproven track record, but, we're going to have to kind of wait and see. He's if you want to call him a Ted Thompson disciple, I mean, he worked under Ted for a long, long time. He's been with the Packers for a long, long time. So he's been kind of, he was promoted from within. He wasn't outside. So there's got to be elements of him that, that would be Ted-like. But I got to think that the marching orders for him and this is probably coming from Murphy, is you got to shit can the bad players on this roster. We need to get Rodgers some talent now. If he doesn't go out and make some tough decisions and purge some of the dead weight on this roster, big contracts and aging veterans, and be more aggressive in free agency, I'd be surprised. I mean, would I be stunned? No, but I'd be surprised. So we'll kind of have to wait and see on that. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like everybody's going to be happy if he just does anything in free agency, right? Yeah. I feel like he's going to have a grace period.
Maybe, but at the same time, here's the interesting thing. That's a good point. But and this is where we don't know Ted ends and begins, and where Russ Ball comes in, who's the next guy on here to talk about. But, this past offseason, they went out and signed a fair amount of free agents. Every one of them freaking sucked, though. It was like every one of them blew up in their face. Give me one free agent they signed that was halfway decent. There really wasn't one. Even the middling ones they signed. I mean, the Martellus Bennett was a joke. Disaster of epic proportions. Lance Kendricks, the other tight end, was a joke. Who's the Ahmad Brooks? I think the linebacker from 49ers was hurt. I mean, just every guy they signed stunk. And again, was it Ted pushing to sign those guys, or was it Elliott Wolf? Was it Gutekunst? Who had the footprints or the fingerprints on that? And I doubt it was Ted, but if it was more so Gutekunst and Russ Ball, let's say, or just others, and even Elliott Wolf, that's not a good what do you want to call it, demo, to get in line for this job, because none of those signings really worked. But again, we'll never know who exactly pushed for him. I'd be stunned if it was Thompson. Thompson just, he likes his own guys, period, end of story. So.
You talked about this before, how Ted Thompson was radio silence. And I feel like that is a big part of the, that's the PR problem, right?
Yeah.
I think that they really hurt the organization by not being a little more transparent about that.
You mean about the situation with Thompson, the succession plan?
About everything okay. In the last 5 years, like, so who they're getting, why they're getting them. Like, there's nothing.
Yeah. There's some truth to that.
And that makes everyone, everyone eventually started to blame Ted.
Well, ultimately, I think it comes down to this too. It's like, who is he held accountable to? Because, even if he wasn't saying anything or wasn't doing anything and it was all insulated and he's the man in the high castle, the guy who ultimately would be checking in on him and supposed to be doing that and making sure things are on the up and up is Mark Murphy, and apparently he wasn't doing anything because,
Right.
The public has been bitching for years and years and years that he hasn't been doing anything and he really hadn't been. And, no one was in Ted's ear. It wasn't Mark. It's a strange. I mean, how it all played out was kind of strange. I don't know if we have to get into all the details of all the nitty gritty, but my gut feel, I kind of have this here. I'll just kind of keep going down so I don't get too far there. So Russ Ball is the next guy in here, and rumor has it he was the guy who was supposed to be the new GM, and he had been apparently the de facto GM the past 6 or so months because there were rumors that Ted had some health issues and he'd been grooming Russ Ball, and Russ Ball has been a big contract guy for the Packers for a while. And rumors flew out that was going to happen, and Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers sort of passive aggressively put out things in the media during the quote GM search that they were not happy and they were not on board with Russ Ball being the GM. And so some of the kind of tinfoil hat theories are that Mark Murphy wanted Russ Ball to be the GM, but then he went, oh shit, nobody likes my choice, and then he had to pivot to Gutekunst at the last minute. Mm-hmm. We'll never know if that's true. Murphy would never admit that, but I think I wouldn't surprise me if something like that happened. So kind of going into the next bullet point from Russ Ball is that it's the new reporting structure. So Mark Murphy set this up where, they're going to meet more in person and yada, 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 all this stuff. So Gutekunst, Mark Murphy, Russ Ball all now report to Mark Murphy. And I put a bullet here in bold, and I got to think you feel the same way, but I am not a fan at all of this structure. It does not make sense. There's no clear line of, who owns what and where, delineations begin and end of who has the power to hire and fire people and all this. And it reeks of, I don't want to say incompetence, but it just doesn't make sense.
It feels a little unprecedented to me.
It feels like 1980s Packers where the board of directors were middling and everything. And you got non-football guys putting their nose where things shouldn't be. And I mean, apparently Mark Murphy is saying that, if Gutekunst went into his office tomorrow and said, I'm going to fire Mike McCarthy, Mark Murphy's basically said, he's our coach for this next year. You're supposed to give the GM authority over everything. And you already kind of hamstrung him with that. And I don't get that. It's just, doesn't add up.
Well, I mean, so does anybody else do anything similar to this at all?
I want to say that there's a couple other. He said Mark Murphy said this press conference, there's like 10 other teams that do this. I don't know what percentage of them are we'll say doing well or are, stable franchises. I know the Vikings are one of them too, but me personally, having a clear line and giving somebody full authority over all the personnel and all those things, which is what a GM should have. So there's no confusion or, just everything permeates down in a very linear fashion, just makes sense. And when you muck it up, who owns what?
I mean, just to be devil's advocate, I guess.
Sure.
Like, I think I mostly agree with what you're saying, but there are clear lines of responsibility, aren't there? Doesn't this make it more clear who's responsible?
Well, like I said, the main thing is, Gutekunst doesn't have the power of the coaching staff. That should be the number one priority of a GM when he starts out. If you're permeating down on the tree of responsibility, he can't even hire and fire the coach.
Yeah.
That's dumb, in my opinion. Now, this all may be some dog and pony show where, unless they win the frickin' Super Bowl this coming year, McCarthy's out, and maybe it's all window dressing and, they're all on board with some whatever. And even maybe McCarthy's in on the deal. Who the hell knows? But it's just, like I said, it reminds me, it makes me hearken back to the bad days when the board of directors in the 70s and 80s was, you had non-football guys. And Mark Murphy was a football player, but he's a business guy, If they got him involved in, some of we'll say the nitty gritty and, game planning and shit like that, that's ridiculous, patently ridiculous. And let's just hope it doesn't go that way.
want to like feed right into your next point about McCarthy.
Yep.
You know,
this goes into coaching changes, the next kind of tree, if you will. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah. So, we'll start at the very top of the coaching staff. McCarthy, and I have it here. He was given a token, quote, 1 year prove-it extension on his contract. And it's essentially window dressing, as no coach or GM goes into the last year of his contract as a lame duck. It wasn't going to happen. So either they were going to let him go and he would leave. He wasn't going to coach this year without a contract extension, and no coach really was. That wasn't specific to the Packers. Any other coach and even their agent would do that in any NFL team. So that mean it looks all fine and dandy, but it doesn't mean a whole lot. I will say that you do need to give him at least some sense of future. What words escaped me? Blah, blah, blah. Some sense of continuity is what I meant to say. Because had they not given an extension, how are you going to bring in any defensive? He needed to bring in a defensive coordinator and lure other coaches in. If you're a lame duck, how are you going to get them in here? So.
You think he's out?
Well, my opinion on McCarthy is this: that he'd made a power play to kind of have more say in the personnel. I think that's how some of this reporting structure came out. I think Murphy, they got together and McCarthy kind of, he doesn't want to be GM. I'm not saying he's going that far, but he wants more of a say, which is all fine and dandy. So he asked for his power play. He got it. And he purged his coaching staff of some problematic people. I'll give him credit for that. He finally got rid of Dom Capers, which we'll get into. But, he's putting all his chips in. And I firmly believe that he has to make it. I don't even think making the NFC Championship game is enough for him. Barring it, here, I'll preface that with saying this. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy and they don't have an absolute catastrophic list of injuries next year, he's got to go to the Super Bowl or he's out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think
that's my opinion?
I don't know.
It's
hard to say anybody should be out if they make the playoffs.
It's happened before.
I know,
but it's rare. It's just right now it reeks of complacency and way too much continuity. And even the way in the coaching changes. Beneath this, I'll get into this, but I haven't really even been much of a fan of what McCarthy's doing with shaking up the coaching staff. Now, again, I'll just pop into it. Firing Dom Capers, he was out as defensive coordinators. I put it in here. 5 years too late. Did I say that? No, I didn't. But
no, that's a clear win.
Yeah, and that seemed like a no-brainer. But within that, things came out. I made a note here. Mike Turkovac, who's a defensive line coach, and Scott McCurley, who was a linebacker's assistant, I think, were both fired from the staff along with Capers. And I didn't understand the Turkovac firing because his unit was one of the units that played well. They kept on other struggling, defensive, we'll say assistants, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So he immediately announced those firings. Edgar Bennett on the offensive side wasn't retained as offensive coordinator. He chose to move on. I think he went to Oakland with Reggie McKenzie. He might be the same capacity over there. And Reggie McKenzie used to be with the Packers, so there's a connection there. And I don't really blame Bennett for that. Alex Van Pelt, the quarterback's coach, people say he was fired. That's not true. His contract just wasn't renewed. So basically, it was a parting of ways, if you will. Now I put a bullet here. It came out, and Aaron Rodgers did an interview with, I can't remember who, but I don't know if you heard it, but he basically said, took a pot shot at McCarthy again. Aaron Rodgers he takes so many freaking passive aggressive pot shots at McCarthy. This is probably the 10th one he's done in his career where he made it clear he was not happy about it and wasn't told about it.
Yeah.
And my thought on that is shut the hell up and play.
I know.
It doesn't, and I was not a fan of that. I'll just leave it at that. I get that you felt that way, but you don't go on radio and do that. And McCarthy has never once done anything or played any passive aggressive games with Rodgers. And Rodgers continues to do it with McCarthy. It's just not. I don't really like it.
Yeah, I don't either. I felt like that was beneath him.
Yeah, and it'd be one thing if this is the first time he's done it, but he does it all the time. He's done at least half a dozen times over the years, and sometimes it may be seen as kind of tongue in cheek. But I guarantee McCarthy doesn't like that shit.
Tongue in cheek? How do you
Not tongue in cheek, but just kind of like ribbing him. Maybe I'm ribbing him. Not in this particular instance. I'm talking before where he's taking little.
Oh yeah, the little things like at a press conference. Yeah, that's no big deal.
But still, you shouldn't do it. You just shouldn't do it.
But this is just low class, man.
I agree. And I don't know. You almost get this. I mean, it's tough to put my finger on it, but what does Rodgers really think about everything? He's obviously. You got to wonder where the franchise is going, and you really wonder if some of these moves were made desperation to make sure they kind of keep him happy, and they got the looming extension, and there's all these extenuating circumstances going on, and it's very juicy stuff, and just not used to it, So I'm unsure how to react to half of it.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and we think all these guys are so professional and calculating, and they have it all put together.
Many of them are petty as shit.
Yeah, and it just seems like they're just riffing on emotion all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's a totally different world they live in. Tens of millions of dollars. They play a professional game. They, 90% of their time is downtime or meetings. It's like how much time are they actually working? It's just a whole different world.
Sure. Yeah.
But onto the good thing. So as the new defensive coordinator, it was Mike Pettin who McCarthy picked. And this was a fantastic hire, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There were rumors out there. Yeah, I'm not sure how old he is. I want to say he's early 40s. He's a young guy. He's an outsider. He's aggressive. He has a great track record. His scheme is fluid. There's certain principles that, there won't be all these square pegs in the round holes with all the players. There'll need to be some, looking at the roster on the defensive side. Obviously, they need some help. But I think this was a fantastic hire. He was the head coach of the Browns a few years ago, and I think they only won like 3 or 4 games.
But that's where I recognize his name. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I'll give almost anybody a pass who's the head coach of the Browns, and he actually I think he won 6 games, and he was there during the Johnny Manziel start. So it's like, Jesus, you already have one hand tied behind your back by being a Browns coach. Yeah. Then they hand you Johnny Manziel. So. So I'm a fan, and I listened to his press conference. He's got a good demeanor. He's very anti Dom Capers, which made me very happy.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead.
No, sorry. I mean, so anything like making just a right angle turn, I think will make everyone feel a lot better. Everything's going to feel fresh, even if it's not a super success overnight. I think it's great.
Yeah. It was definitely a move in the right direction, the right guy, younger, outside hungry, just different and more dynamic and just lots of good qualities there. Can he clean this thing up in a year? Who the hell knows? They need a lot of help, but they started on the right foot with at least a coordinator. So but I have another bullet under here. And again, it was kind of wishy-washy how McCarthy was doing this. I mean, he kept around all these middling assistants from the Capers regime, which, he's got Winston Moss and, he wanted him to keep, this, what was it? Joe Witt and these other guys. And normally when you fire the defense coordinator, you purge the whole damn thing. And he's kind of basically told Pettin, you got to keep these guys and find room for them. And I think that's fucking stupid personally, but
that is a little weird.
It doesn't make sense. It looks like, I don't want to say it seems incompetent, but it seems way too good old boy and way too it doesn't make sense, So I disagree with it, but hey,
what ends up happening is they will screw things up, either big or small, and they'll be gone eventually. It's just not.
Yeah, there's a lot of deflecting of blame. I think it's just, McCarthy is just as, I shouldn't say just as, I mean, I think he's a pretty good coach. I think he's been overrated. And Aaron Rodgers has made him look really good. He needs to develop his scheme and change it up big time, but his offensive scheme, that is. But, he was plenty to blame for stuff too. I mean, look, the buck stops with him at Hundley. You could say Alex Van Pelt didn't nurture Hundley along, but and part of it is Thompson for drafting Hundley. I'll say that too. But that's a failure, a pretty big failure by McCarthy there, and he didn't take much blame for that. And it's so he's a stubborn SOB, as I've said, and there seems to be some deflecting a blame and some power play. Like I said, kind of this passive aggressive power play. So it's going to be a very interesting season just from the McCarthy standpoint.
Yeah, no question.
Yep. So now we go on to what I'm going to call these are looming items. They're looming personnel decisions that the new GM, Brian Gutekunst, is going to have to be faced with right away. And none of this has to do with drafting right now. This is strictly existing players or existing contracts, roster, personnel type related things on the roster right now. And number one, by a country mile, is the looming Aaron Rodgers contract extension. Right now, Aaron Rodgers is underpaid, and he's probably middle of the pack, pardon the pun, for his salary and all that. But everybody knew it was going to be expensive, but the litmus test for where it's going to go was when Jimmy Garoppolo signed his extension with the 49ers. What was that, about 2 weeks ago? And when I saw those numbers, I just damn near fell out of my chair. I knew it was going to be pretty big, but I didn't think it was going to be as big as it was. I want to say it was $137 million over 5 years for a guy who played 7 games. I think Garoppolo is going to be good. And this is where the market is with quarterbacks. So I will not blame Jimmy Garoppolo by any means. It's the market setup, it's the contracts, and it's the position, and it's all these dynamics and the collective bargaining agreement. But I mean,
well, you can't blame him.
No, I blame the system, I guess, is what I say. And the lack of good quarterbacks is not helping.
Right. Well, I didn't read that much.
Freaking Kirk Cousins is probably going to get $30 million a year. Yeah. Kirk Cousins.
So the things I read about Garoppolo and the new contract, they just keep comparing him to Rodgers.
Really?
Yeah, because Rodgers got a contract after.
Oh, he got a big deal after like 6 or 7 games. That was smart, and that was a smart move. And I think what for lack of a better term, it is the going rate. I get that, but this is one of the single biggest things that the new collective bargaining agreement has to address is ridiculous salaries for quarterbacks. They're taking up. The past CBA, it was huge guaranteed money for rookies just getting drafted.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And they took care of that. They kind of slotted that, But this next time, you can't have quarterbacks taking up, a third of the fucking cap. Pardon my French. How are you going to surround these other with any good players? It's out of control and it's going bad
a little bit. I am worried because I feel like I feel like it's going to come to a head with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. No doubt. And I mean, look at it this way. So Aaron Rodgers has 2 years left on his deal. He's going to get an extension, but probably by training camp at the latest. But so my opinion, I say right now, Aaron Rodgers is due to make, and I'm cautiously using this phrase, but a minimum of $30 million annually, which means he might be $35 million. And then I put goodness, like my goodness. Yeah. Now, I didn't put this in here, but do you believe Aaron Rodgers would take any kind of hometown discount with the Packers on an extension to potentially allow the team to surround him with decent players?
I would have said yes before, but then, he's throwing these comments around.
That, and look at what happened with this. He's got the Packers bent over a barrel, and if let me put it this way, if I'm him now, Ted's gone. He doesn't know what Gutekunst is going to do, but he's got to be looking at every year they rolled over all this cap space, but they never brought any players for him. They never signed any other. They never improved the roster around him. Right. So part of me is, if I was him, I'd be like, to hell with you guys. I'm going to get all the money I can get.
I know,
but it's a new leaf.
Right.
It's a new. It turning over. I'm talking about Gutekunst, and maybe if they really sit him down, they go, look, we're making all these wholesale changes for a reason. Can you take $27 million instead of 34? And you don't want to say semantics, but let's hope because if he just says, I want to be the highest paid, highest guaranteed, and all that, it's going to be a slow death for this regime. And it's just by virtue of the economics.
He's going to have to not take as much as he's worth.
And it doesn't have to be egregious. I mean, Tom Brady is like,
right.
I mean, I don't think he'd ever pull a Brady, which that'd be fantastic if he did. But if he could take 10% less, that's 10% more they can give to other players.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to have to happen.
Will it happen? I have no idea. I think the chances are slim. I truly think he's going to just get whatever the hell he can get at the max, and but who knows?
Well, and he's worth it. So
if he proved anything, He's worth $50 million a year. It's
scary.
The team is the Browns without him.
Yeah, clearly.
Oh, yeah,
clearly.
Yeah. So that covers that huge pink elephant in the room or whatever. What's the phrase? 800-pound gorilla sitting in the corner. So good luck with that, Gutekunst and Russ Ball and all you guys.
I'm going to be fascinated about this I don't know how quickly they're going to do it. I mean, rumors were that it was going to happen pretty quickly, but then I didn't hear anything after that.
I mean, his agent and him might be saying, hey, let's let this play out. Let's see what they might be saying. Let's see what Kirk Cousins signs for.
Well, right.
I wouldn't blame him.
No.
If Kirk Cousins gets $30 million, it's almost on principle to be like, I want $35 million minimum.
I know.
Who the hell knows?
It's troubling because it's in the Packers' best interest to wrap it up quickly, I think, at this point.
Yep. And I don't know where Rodgers' head's at. I mean, I don't know how loyal he is truly to the Packers. There's so many instances that look like this is careening slowly towards the Brett Favre scenario.
I know.
Doesn't it?
I mean, he so much has said that.
Yeah.
He was quoted saying, if it could happen to Brett Favre, it could happen to anybody.
I mean, he's right.
He's right.
Yeah. Now, he was basically, in the context of that comment, though, it was basically saying, it could get to the point where they want to, I don't mind being here, but the economics and, just the way the franchise is going, I'll play somewhere else. I don't think he meant something like I'm going to orchestrate my way out of here. It was more or less like it may happen where I'll end up playing somewhere else just because of my age and where, all this, that, or the other.
It'll be interesting to see.
Not a devious plot to go to like the Vikings.
Right. I don't know. I mean, people change and,
yeah,
but we don't have anybody in the wings, like it'll be interesting.
Brett Hundley. Kidding me?
Right. So, well, he's not even going to be our guy next year, is he?
Fuck if I know. I hope not.
A lot can happen in 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
We'll see. It would be great if we have somebody in the wings that we could feel like, the Packers have some bargaining potential, but.
Yep. Well, how about this?
My chips are on keeping them as long as we can.
Oh, no doubt. That's the right thing to do. It is. It's just a very precarious financial type thing. But without question, I mean, so do you think there's a chance that the Packers draft a quarterback in the first 3 rounds?
This year?
Yep.
Well, I think they have to.
I'm talking top 3 rounds. Not if they'll do it at all. And I'm talking top 3 rounds.
I don't know.
If they got a real talent sitting out there in the 2nd round, you'd take them. This is the same exact age that Brett Favre was when they drafted Aaron Rodgers, 34 years old.
Okay, this is why I'm not, I'm not a GM. But to me, I would try to get the best player possible when the time comes. The best player, because. You can trade them or whatever, right? Like if you don't have a need, or you can trade somebody else, or whatever you got to do. Mm-hmm. So I mean, if our number comes up and there's a quarterback available, yes, absolutely, we should. Do I think we will? I mean, hopefully they do that. I mean, if that's the situation, I hope they don't just get somebody to get somebody.
Yeah, if it's in the top 2 rounds, he's got to be a pretty special player. He shouldn't be some. I don't see them like trading up anywhere to get a quarterback or something like that. It'd have to like land in their lap, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's what. So I see that.
Yeah.
I mean, we have other needs too.
We have a ton of needs. My God, our best overall player last year was a frickin' punter. I mean, it's true. It was a punter. It's like, jeez Louise. So. Okay, next bullets. Now we get into I'll call it the aging veterans portion. And all these players are beloved, shall we say. But all these players have their issues.
Yeah.
So start with Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb. Both are going into the last year of their respective deals, and both players are clearly in the decline. It could be argued, which one is more in decline than the other. It's you could say it's a push almost. Jordy Nelson, it's patently obvious he's lost a step. But he still has a ton of value with Rodgers, especially in the red zone. He caught like 6 touchdowns last. He was leading the league in touchdown passes before Rodgers went down. Now all the touchdowns he caught were like 3-yarders. He wasn't catching bombs because he's like I said, he's getting slow and he lost a step. But I think he's still got value. So, but he's got to take a pay cut. He's due like $11 million. Sorry, you're going to get half that.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, and this is a great quote that an agent had, or it was either an agent or GM. He says, if you're going in and talking to a player, and your plan is, well, we need to take this guy back at half the salary or X percentage of the salary, and they say no, you have to be prepared at that moment to cut said player outright, right there.
Yep.
Because it's possible they could just flat out say no.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb would both take pay cuts, but that doesn't mean you should still keep them, in my opinion, because that's one thing that Ted sucked at doing at the latter part of his tenure was getting rid of aging veterans. And they were all players that he signed. I mean, when he first got here, he dumped every aging veteran he could get that was of Mike Sherman tenure. But his own guys, the next guy on the list here, Clay Matthews.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to go.
And he's an enigma from this perspective. He's one of their top 1 or 2 players on defense. So he's the tallest midget, as they say.
Right.
It's like, they need him, but he's not that good. I shouldn't say he's not that good. He's solid at best right now in his career.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have any other freaking players. But he's due to make $15 million a year.
Yeah.
And he's not worth half that.
No.
So he needs to do 2 things. If he wants to stay here, take a significant pay cut, and he needs to move to inside linebacker full time. No more of this pussyfooting around. I'm going to share this, that. That's what happens. And if he doesn't agree to both, you cut him.
Yeah.
And, the rumor has it out there that he is not willing to take any pay cut. So again, if he says no, you better be ready to say, okay, you're cut.
So where do you think he goes?
Who the hell knows? Well, I mean, this is going to sound funny and kind of like terse, but I love my team and my team only. Mm-hmm. I don't play fantasy football because I can't imagine rooting for another player who's not on the Packers. So if somebody leaves and goes to, the Vikings, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Once they leave the Packers, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I don't care if they go to the Bears, the Lions, the Vikings, whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't care where he goes. It's pretty simple for me. Others would be devastated if he went to the Vikings. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. I mean,
that's my own opinion.
I think we're gonna have to talk through that. Like, so did the Vikings just have a huge year because there's no Aaron Rodgers and they filled the vacuum, or are they actual contenders this next year?
I'll tell you what, I have no idea. And the reason I have no idea is because their defense looked great. And then Philadelphia annihilated them.
That's exactly right.
Embarrassed them in the national championship.
Yeah.
They were like a top 1 or 2 defense, and they got their ass handed to them. They didn't have any injuries. They had all their starters, and they got their ass handed to them by Nick Foles, backup quarterback, who that run that Nick Foles went on as a backup quarterback, best run that a backup quarterback's ever gone on in the history of the league.
Probably ever will again.
So he beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, and he obviously beat the Vikings. So credit where credit is due. He played out of his mind. But, I mean, still, the Vikings, I did not see that coming. That was embarrassing. So I don't know if they're a paper champion. Case Keenum played okay, but they're already like, I don't want to make this Viking radio, but who knows? I tend to think that they're closer to a pretender than being the real thing.
I did too.
And I wouldn't have said that until after the NFC Championship when they got their ass handed to them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They're a dome team though, and so they ended up having to go on the road and play outside. They're a different team when they're not in the dome.
True.
So that's part of it.
Yeah.
But
so
the last guy I have on here, there's other roster decisions that are there, but I'm kind of trying to pick the meat and potatoes, the bigger decisions with some of these veterans. Morgan Burnett. he's always been kind of like an unsung hero on the defense. They drafted him Super Bowl year 2010. He tore his ACL, so he missed the Super Bowl. But then came back, and he's never really been a Pro Bowler or a great player, but he's always been a very solid player. He's always been very versatile too. And he got a second contract from the Packers. He's due. He's going to become a free agent. I guess right now he's going to be a free agent, and the going rate for him is going to be damn near $10 million. But is he worth that? He's another one of these like veterans that he adds value to the Packers, but is he worth that kind of money? And his body's breaking down. He's constantly getting hurt, which is it's a life cycle of an NFL player, no doubt. But I tend to think look, maybe he goes out there and you do the old Ted Thompson thing. You say, look, here's a number that we're comfortable with. If you can get something better, go do it. If you go out there and you can't find it, come back. That's what I would kind of do with him.
Yeah.
But he ain't worth $10 million a year.
No.
He's a solid player at best.
Yeah.
He's not a Pro Bowler. He's very versatile, and he has value in our defense, but don't let that cloud your judgment.
I don't think there's anything else to say about that. He's
he's an enigma, He's so versatile. He plays cornerback, safety. He played inside linebacker. Yeah.
But he doesn't have the sweet deals around town that the other guys do. You talked about Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, Clay Matthews. Like, they have advertising deals. And so there could be something to that. They take a small pay cut, like a token pay cut. So, or a lack of increase or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. Because they can
hometown discount.
Yeah, because they can just keep their their advertising contracts, which probably pay them almost as much. Mm-hmm. I don't know. But Morgan Burnett doesn't have that.
Yeah, no doubt.
At least that I've seen. I haven't seen him on any ads.
Yeah. What's interesting? I mean, this is kind of on a somewhat different note, but it's just about money tied up in players. So I saw this from a guy on Twitter. He's another Packer kind of beat. He's not a beat writer, but he's just a Packer blogger. And it kind of made my eyes got wide on it. So, he made the comment essentially was, we should be less worried about paying Aaron Rodgers over $30 million and be more worried about having $40 million tied up in Devontae Adams, Nick Perry, and Clay Matthews.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, is that not the truth? They overpaid for Devontae Adams.
I know, but
again, they painted themselves in the corner because he was the only guy worth a damn.
That's right.
And and here's why they overpaid for him, because his concussion history.
I know.
I think he was really ascending. He's coming onto his own, but the guy's had 3 concussions in like 14 months. If he has another bad concussion, that might be it.
Mm-hmm.
It might be like Sam Shields, and you pay. I mean, looking at Rodgers, paying big money deals to receivers is proving to be you really don't need to do it. Look at Greg Jennings. I mean, remember when he left and he didn't do shit because nobody could throw him the ball. And then same with James Jones. He comes back and did pretty because Rodgers makes so many of these guys, So for Ted, for being so savvy and we'll say frugal and cough cough cheap, he's got some boneheaded contracts out there too for some of his own guys. Now, I'm not saying that the Devontae Adams contract is boneheaded. That's I framed that up wrong, but they overpaid for him. But what else did they have? They didn't sign him. They got a bunch of guys with wheelchairs and walkers out there. He's the one young guy with some speed.
Right.
I bet you they're going to draft a wide receiver in the first or second round. Bet you.
That would be interesting.
This team needs speed on offense so bad, and defense. They're slow as shit everywhere.
I don't know. Like those are the high profile positions, but I feel like
they are. I mean, Elliot, have you seen that? I saw a stat the other where they basically had the quote. I don't know if it's football times, but it's like 40-yard dash times, or whatever. The Packers are the slowest team in the league at skill position players, wide receivers and tight ends.
Yeah.
Number 32 out of 32. Slow. I mean,
how are they measuring
They need some frickin' speed.
So they're measuring like off the line?
I think it's, for like the 40 time.
Oh, okay. So like not game time stats.
But still.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, what's funny, they got Trevor Davis on their team, who's really, really fast, but he sucks. They got Jeff Janis on their team, who's really, really fast, but he sucks. And that's a more dead weight that it's like, why are you carrying these guys around for years and years when they're not anything?
Yeah.
They're wasting roster spots is what they're doing.
It's tough.
And those are some failures and I'm calling them that, failures with Ted. Janis.
Yeah.
Whose call is it to keep Janis? Is that Ted? Was that Mike? I mean, it's not Mike. It's got to be Ted. And it's like, what is he doing? He's barely even playing special teams.
Yeah.
And a guy that fast, a guy like Janis, he worries me. Or not Trevor Davis, but more so Janis, where like, if Janis got cut, I could see him going to the Patriots and catching 50 passes. I could. Because they'd actually find a way to frickin' use him. Now I'm getting on I'm turning into curmudgeon.
I don't know. I mean, so how about we like say like a percentage? I'm like
percentage of what?
I'm like 80% optimistic. I mean, I feel like we're much better off than 50%. Over last year.
I'm about 50-50.
Yeah.
And I'm 50-50 because it's more so like the psychology of things, maybe not necessarily the straight up, quantifiable talent and whatnot. I mean, the power plays with McCarthy, how accountable are people going to be? And, I like Pettin and all that, but he forced him to keep these assistants and then the power structure. Those things worry me,
Mm-hmm.
and how motivated are people going to be to do this, that, or the other? And the flip side, too, is, this team does need a big injection of talent. And you're not going to be able to do it just with the draft. You're not going to be able to do it just with free. You got to do it all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And they got to draft really well. They got to hit a home run draft this year to really make it happen. A lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure.
I think that we need, like when there's like a really strong run deep into the playoffs or Super Bowl, I always feel like there's a balance of, somebody on defense who has some leadership, like just to keep things kind of upbeat and motivated.
You'd hope that'd be Clay Matthews, but Clay Matthews isn't much of a leader.
I don't feel like he's the guy. I could be wrong.
Not.
Maybe he is.
He's not a rah-rah guy either. And, Mike Daniels, I like him.
Yeah.
But he seems to be almost more talk.
Yeah.
He had a poor year. And I mean, he got hurt earlier in the year, but who might be their best defensive player? I'm not kidding. Their best overall defensive player. Can you name him? Kenny Clark.
Well, he had that one good game.
He had more than that, Elliot.
Yeah.
I was watching him. He's only 21 years old, and he was coming on real strong the last 5 or 6 games. He had a huge jump from the year 1 to year 2 jump that McCarthy calls it. It's really big.
Yeah.
He's looking badass. He's better than Mike Daniels right now, I think. He's stud. But if your best defender is a nose tackle in a 3-4 defense, it's like that's like on offense saying your best offensive player is your left guard. It's got to be a quarterback, a running back, a receiver.
Yeah.
And on defense, it's got to be an outside linebacker or a cornerback. It can't be a freaking defensive lineman.
Yeah. So I feel like there's holes.
Yeah, there's a lot. They can be filled. They're going to have to be aggressive, and they're going to have to draft well.
I don't envy Gutekunst or any of these, any of the new guys, any of the old guys, especially. Yeah. There's so many moving parts.
How would you like to have that? How's the dynamic between Gutekunst and McCarthy?
Well, I think that's what you were alluding to with the the new reporting structure. I don't know. I mean,
I could see McCarthy going to the wall and be like, I know you don't like me, but you can't do shit. I hope it's not like that.
Well, I don't feel like it could be any worse than it was.
That's true. I'll give you that.
I feel like it was just as dysfunctional before. So even if they don't see eye to eye, like I don't think they were seeing eye to eye before.
Yeah. Hey, did you? I remember I actually put this on the Packer page. Bob McGinn, the old beat writer, I screenshotted one of his things where it talked about how the team was built in around Ted, and like a scathing indictment about how he was terrified of players getting injured, and like the team was framed so that they wouldn't hit hard, and they were a soft team, and it was just. Oh man, it was a nasty indictment of how the culture had become, and it all started from Ted, and Ted was so terrified of injuries. It was just, it was yuck.
On the defensive side of things?
Everything. More so defense, but everything.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess that kind of makes sense. We always called it like the bend, not break, but
So they said that the practices were just so lethargic and just it was embarrassing to read that. Really, it was just
See, that's why I feel 80%. Because sometimes just any change can be positive.
Yep. No, I agree with that. I mean, maybe I guess I'm more optimistic than 50-50, but the fact that there's so many things at play, there's holes in the roster. You got all these. There's so much upheaval. The title of this episode, Upheaval. At one time, it's can they steady it for the year? Or is this more of a long term thing? So, who knows?
All right.
Yep.
You got to save something for next time.
No doubt, right? Will there be a next time? Or am I done? I'm kidding. We'll be back, baby.
You're lining guests up, man. It's I'm pretty excited about what's coming up.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get Aaron Rodgers on the next episode. Yeah. But he told me I don't have a pot of gold.
Buried the lead, huh?
Yeah. Couldn't help it.
I don't know. I would have a hard time talking to him. I wouldn't be able to hit him with any hard questions. I'd be too soft on him. It would not be very effective yet.
Yeah, he's a very sharp guy. I think I don't any cleverness or any even what I thought would be hard hitting questions would be like ridiculous. So yeah.
I mean, if he just wants to have somebody worshiping him, I'd be happy to fit that bill.
Nice.
Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.
Podcast.
Chair.
I know, right?